The following content originally aired on the Live and Local program, which airs every weekday morning from 9 a.m. to noon on WKVT AM 1490, your source for news, talk, and the arts. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you for listening. Moving into the second hour of the Live and Local program on WKVT AM 1490. Going to be spending it talking to Michael Wood-Lewis. He is the founder of FrontPorchForum.com. A modern-day cross between a bulletin board and a virtual town green is the description I have of this. Michael, thanks for joining us on the show today. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Chris.
You're calling in from Burlington?
Sunny Burlington, yeah.
Oh, is it sunny there?
Oh, not at all. It's raining and wet and icy.
You've got the same crud that we've got going on down here in Brattleboro, huh?
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons we're talking today is about your website, Front Porch Forum, which started in Burlington, but has now spanned all around Vermont, including here in Brattleboro. It's now available in every community in the state, correct?
That's right, as of this past fall.
Well, very cool. Tell us a little bit about what it is and how it's been established in Brattleboro thus far.
Sure. Well, Front Porch Forum is an online space where neighbors can connect and build community. And it's a pretty simple idea. Every local community in Vermont now has its own Front Porch Forum. We started in Burlington. We expanded through Chittenden, Washington County to Addison. And we were kind of going town by town when we got together in a partnership with Vermont Council on Rural Development, following up the Irene tropical storm, and looked for ways where we could help more communities. And through that work, we were able to eventually expand in the past couple months to the entire state. So we're real happy now to be serving all of Windham County.
Yeah, and I joined it last week in preparation for this interview, and it seems pretty simple the way it works. It was very easy to sign up for, and then it seems like people post and we get digests of that in our email.
Yeah, the service is free. Anybody in Vermont can join. You go to frontporchforum.com, put in your street address, and it will locate your particular local Front Porch Forum. And then people go online and they post about the simple things, mostly, that neighbors need to talk about, like lost dogs, lost cats, car break-ins, house break-ins, selling items, couches and dressers and bicycles, and giving away things. Recommendations, that's a big area where people are asking for leads to a good plumber or a good source of firewood, whatever it might be. Someone to help clear their roof of snow. Borrowing items, that's common, borrowing roof rakes, ladders, etc. So really, people can just post about anything they want to, and it goes out to the several hundred neighbors nearest to their location.
Yeah, and it seems like, at least here in Brattleboro, I haven't checked others, but one of the first things that we get to on our homepage here is a list of the local officials, who are participating in this as well. So it seems like it's been a good resource for the municipality to communicate things that are happening in the town.
You know, it wasn't our first idea to include local public officials, but as Front Porch Forum became increasingly popular in our initial communities, we got lots of requests from select board members, school board members, town clerks, etc., saying, hey, can we participate as well? And, of course, that makes good sense. And so we have over 1,000 local public officials participating in their local Front Porch Forums. And they add a great layer to the local conversation.
Now, I read Bill McKibben's article in Yankee Magazine that's on the Front Porch Forum website about the genesis of this. And for you, it was very much a neighborhood endeavor to get this going. You had just moved up to Burlington. Tell us a little bit about your ideas behind putting this together.
Yeah, it's hard to believe personally. It's been 15 years or so since my wife and I moved to our Burlington neighborhood. We had been living and working in Washington, D.C. before that. And we came up here to settle, and before we had kids, really, now we've got a full set of them, but didn't have a dog to walk, didn't have kind of those natural ways that people connect with neighbors easily. And we were having a heck of a time meeting our neighbors in any meaningful way. And so we decided to try a few different ideas and got off to a couple false starts and never really could break through. And then we decided to give the concept that became Front Porch Forum a try, and it just took off immediately. And that was in 2000 in our own neighborhood. And we did it there for 6 years just as a project. And we're doing other things in our work lives. And then in 2006, we were getting so much interest from other places around Vermont that we decided to go ahead and give it a shot and get entrepreneurial and form a broader service and build out a website. And we launched Front Porch Forum as a business, and we've been operating it that way ever since then.
Now, in larger communities like Burlington, where this is more established, is Front Porch Forum segmented by neighborhoods, or is it still all-encompassing for the town? I know Brattleboro here, it's very new. It just launched in September. So, the members are in here. We all encompass Brattleboro. But even within a small town like Brattleboro, there's neighborhoods, and I could see this being segmented eventually as people get on board into those neighborhoods.
Yes, it's a tricky trade-off, and we get lots of compelling feedback from our members, rarely agreeing with each other, by the way. I mean, everyone has different definitions of what their neighborhood, quote-unquote,
right,
covers. And so our approach is to try to set up an area that could attract a few hundred participants. Mm-hmm. And so to do that, we aim to cover, each of our Front Porch Forums starts out covering about an average of about 1,000 households.
Okay.
And so a lot of Vermont towns are about that size. And so most Front Porch Forums in the state cover a single town. Mm-hmm. Some are covering multiple towns if they're lightly populated, like up in the Northeast Kingdom, for example. Mm-hmm. Others, like Burlington, Essex Town, Colchester, et cetera, Rutland, are divided up into neighborhood forums. There are 20, for example, in the city of Burlington.
Okay. So with those smaller, those outlying areas around Burlington, and I spent some time up there going to college, so I'm thinking of like Winooski, Williston, and places like that. Are they part of the Burlington Front Porch Forum, or do they have their own?
There are 20 different Burlington Front Porch
20
forums.
different, so you have it segmented out that way.
One for each neighborhood in Burlington, and then Winooski formerly had 4, and after working with that for a while, we realized that was not the optimal setup, and so we reconfigured it, and now there's a single Front Porch Forum covering all of Winooski, and it's very vibrant. Lots of activity on that one.
Does that model come down this far south in the state? I know it's, again, still a fledgling program in a lot of ways, so I'm thinking of the outlying areas like Putney and Dummerston and Guilford, and you may not be familiar with these towns, but these are all bedroom communities of Brattleboro. Do they have their own Front Porch Forums at this point?
Again, it's based on how large they are.
I see.
What we find is the real magic of Front Porch Forum happens when it's big enough to be useful. So if it covers 20 households, that's just not big enough to be useful over time. Mm-hmm. And yet small enough to feel intimate, where people will actually have conversation, and it won't feel like writing a letter to the editor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It'll feel more like speaking up at a neighborhood block party.
Great.
Or at a small town meeting. And so that's what we're going for. As you can tell from what I described, it's not a cut and dry model. We start off with our best guess of how to lay it out, and then over time we look at the data and we listen to feedback from members and we make adjustments.
Yeah, I think the best internet ventures do have an organic component to it like that, and you kind of let it grow on its own and then pick what is strong about it and pair what is weak of it, and that makes it a better forum all the way through. Let's take a break right now, but we'll come back and have more conversation with Michael Wood Lewis, the founder of FrontPorchForum.com, now available here in the Brattleboro community. You're listening to Live and Local program on WKVT AM 1490.
Blue railroad train and going down the railroad track. It makes me feel so doggone blue to listen to that old smokestack. Drivers are road.
Welcome back to the Live and Local program on WKVT AM 1490. I want to thank Brattleboro Memorial Hospital's BMH Physician Group for being a sponsor of the program. Complete family health care made easy. You can learn more online at bmhvt.org. We're spending the hour visiting with Michael Wood Lewis, the founder of FrontPorchForum.com, a website that began in Burlington but has spread all across Vermont into every community, including here in Brattleboro, as of September 1st. Now, Michael, we have a few different online communities here in Brattleboro and a few that have come and gone. iBrattleboro is something that people use a lot to keep up on events and to post news and to have conversations. They call that Citizen Action News. We have a free cycle site on Yahoo that's very active for people who want to exchange ideas or get rid of things. Talk a little bit about Front Porch Forum and where it fits into that assortment of web options.
Sure. That's a great question. The online environment is rich and getting richer, right? There are so many options out there globally, and just like any form of media or I like radio or television, more options oftentimes can lead to a richer all-around experience. We've found that Front Porch Forum can work as a great complement to other local online services. For example, with news media, Front Porch Forum has no journalists working here. We're not a news entity. We're a space where neighbors can talk to each other. That said, people oftentimes say they get their news, a lot of their local news, from their local Front Porch Forum, from their neighbors. Mm. And what we've come to see is that Front Porch Forum can be a great stirrer up of interest in local news. Basically, we grow the audience for local journalism. I've talked to, I can't even keep track of the number of people who say that they have not followed local news, and they might be watching national news or world news, taking that in, but they aren't tuned into the local issues until they get on Front Porch Forum because their dog is lost. Uh-huh. And they find the lost dog, but then 3 months later they discover they're still reading Front Porch Forum, and they've got drawn into the local discussion about a planning and zoning issue or a school budget issue or what have you. And now they're hungry for some actual reporting on the subject to supplement what they're hearing, the opinion they're hearing from the neighbors and the submissions from local public officials. So, I think it's all part of an ecosystem that, if it's healthy, you have lots of different elements that are going strong and adding to it. We have a free cycle up in this part of Vermont. We have, iBrattleboro, I should say, certainly is something that I've admired for a long time. And invited the founders there to be on a panel with me a few years ago. They certainly have been held up, rightfully so, as a national model for local news and discussion. I think Brattleboro is fortunate to have that. Burlington does not have a similar service as iBrattleboro, and I wish we did, to really focus on the news aspect. But go ahead.
I was going to say, I like your description of it in terms of this sort of, two neighbors over the fence having a conversation, and it starts in one area, and then it gets to another area, and before you know it, you've spent 20 minutes talking to your neighbor over the fence about 4 or 5 different items. It begins with, hey, have you seen that dog that Joe lost, and then it gets into these other things. So I'm envisioning, and again, I'm pretty new to how the site works. I'm envisioning threads, just like a bulletin board, where these conversations kind of go on, and then when it reaches a different topic, as bulletin board threads often do, then it's opportunity to create a new thread?
Yeah, so that is how bulletin boards work. I agree. That's not how Front Porch Forum works.
Okay.
We are not threaded. Our conversations are not threaded, and that's intentional because, in fact, each online Front Porch Forum is pretty small. It's a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people, the biggest ones. And it's kind of like imagine hosting a party in your home, and what's important is getting a critical mass of people, into the space to the point where they're having fun. If you keep breaking the people apart into groups and sticking them in separate rooms, every time someone says, well, that's interesting about the mayor's race, but what do you think about the Red Sox? Oh, time out. Please go into the other room if you're going to talk about the Red Sox.
Right.
And that's not how people have conversations. And what we're trying to do with Front Porch Forum is get neighbors who live near each other talking more.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not so interested in, optimizing, finding the very best plumber. It's more about, hey, let's just get everybody chatting more. And if you need a plumber, well, here's 300 of your neighbors online talking. You just throw that question out. You don't have to find the right online room. You don't have to code it a certain way. You just ask.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll hear from 10 people saying, hey, I had a great experience with plumber X, Y, or Z. And what we find is that people get great results. You mentioned Free Cycle, for example.
Mm-hmm.
People often say they get better results on Front Porch Forum even than Free Cycle, which is kind of crazy because Front Porch Forum, you might have a few hundred people. On Free Cycle, you might have thousands. But it's a different quality. People really they're just the people who live right near you. And there's no anonymity. It's another critical piece.
That is a critical piece. I really think any website now that still has that veil of anonymity loses a certain bit of credibility. It needs to be all transparent out in the open. And it is interesting to hear how your model is distinct from what other message boards try to do, which is compartmentalize conversations. And you're actually trying to bring people, after having this conversation online or starting a conversation online, off the computer and face-to-face in the same room or at the end of their driveway, having these conversations. Give us an example of how that's worked. You give us an anecdote that models that.
Oh, there's so many. There's thousands of them. I use one only because I'm thinking of it right now that actually Bill McKibben did write about. There was a mother in South Burlington in a neighborhood, had a teenage daughter. I think she was 14 or so, who was approaching her birthday, and she wanted to have a birthday party. Mm-hmm. And the mother was pleased to discover she wanted to have a wholesome activity. She wanted to go canoeing with a half a dozen friends, or maybe it was 12 friends. They needed 6 canoes. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. And so the mother thought, well, okay, great. We'll rent canoes. We'll make this happen. We'll go out to the river. Well, she priced the canoe rental, and it was out of her budget. She couldn't do it. Broke the news to the daughter. The daughter was pretty upset. And in a fit, she said, I see canoes poking out from behind every other outbuilding up and down our street, every other garage. Why can't, we just borrow them from neighbors?
Yeah.
And the mother said, well, oh, honey, we don't really know these folks. We can't borrow someone's canoe. What if we, wreck it or scratch it? And the daughter's pretty upset. The mom's upset because, nothing's going right. And she says, no, wait a minute. We've got this Front Porch Forum. In our neighborhood, there's about 200 members out of about 250 households. Let me give it a shot. She puts a a one-sentence thing out there saying my daughter's looking to borrow some canoes for her birthday party. And by the next morning, I think there were 10 offers in her inbox and 2 canoes sitting on her front lawn. She didn't know where they came from. And she had more canoes than she knew to do it.
Wow.
So they had the birthday party. She saved the few $100 she would have had to spend. She got the direct results she wanted. And she went on to post a thank you note to the whole neighborhood a couple of weeks later. And she said, you know what? She said, I'm so grateful, of course, to everyone who offered and those who came through. And we saved that money and we had our party. But she said, now, I've lived in this neighborhood for 10 years, and I really didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And now when I walk the dog every evening after supper, I know people.
Yeah.
I know that they've loaned me something. And I'm looking for opportunities to pay that forward.
Yeah.
And so when someone says, can anybody help shovel out Mrs. Johnson's walk because, she's broke her hip last winter, and she said, my daughter and I, we're all over it.
Right.
I'm getting choked up now because this stuff does choke me up. It's the power of neighbors, and Vermonters are really good at that. And Front Porch Forum just offers an opportunity to do it that much more easily.
Yeah, no, that's a terrific story, exemplifying what you hope to accomplish there. We're going to take another break, but then we're going to talk a little bit about, well, we've talked a little bit about the origins of Front Porch Forum, but we're going to get a little bit deeper into that and this kind of good fences make good neighbors mentality here in New England. Michael Wood Lewis is my guest. He's the founder of Front Porch Forum. It is available here in Brattleboro. All you have to do is go to frontporchforum.com and sign up. Back after these messages on Live and Local.
It's many miles from where I am to the only one for me. It's so lonesome here, waiting for the manifest.
And Michael Wood Lewis, my guest on the phone, said Doc Watson would be good music to talk about Front Porch Forum with, and he's absolutely right. Some good bluegrass there from Doc Watson as we go in and out of our segments, talking about frontporchforum.com. A new website which is now available in every community here in Vermont, including Brattleboro. Go to frontporchforum.com, sign up, get into conversations with your neighbors. And Michael, we talked a little bit about your background coming from outside of the Vermont community and coming from backgrounds in the Midwest and the South, where neighbors are a little bit more forthcoming in terms of how they reach out to new neighbors. Isn't that correct?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know. I hesitate to make broad categorizations about different.
I'm a native New Englander. You won't offend me. Yeah, it's true. We're a little more hesitant. We're a little more reticent to get involved at the onset of things if we don't know somebody.
Well, there is a story that I shared that I think Bill McKibben included in his article there. When we first moved to Vermont, my wife and I, 15 years ago, we were trying to break in and get to know folks, and it just really wasn't going well. I mean, no one was rude. It just nothing was blossoming. And my wife, we were at dinner, sitting at our kitchen table one night, and I said, if when I was a kid, the folks who lived in this neighborhood would bring over homemade cookies when people moved in. Mm-hmm. And we've been here a year, and I'm still waiting for my cookies. And so I was content just to be a grump about it, but she's a school teacher. She's a take-action kind of gal. And she said, well, it doesn't matter who makes them. The point is to have the exchange. So she set out and whipped up a batch of cookies, was headed out the door a little while later with them, balancing them on paper plates. I said, wait. Swap out the paper plates for china, and that way the people have to bring the plates back, and we can have, a second chance for a conversation. Of course, secretly, I was thinking somebody might actually fill the plate with cookies on its return trip, and I might get my cookies after all.
That's not what happened.
Went, and sad to say, that was the last we ever saw of our plate. And so I'm not willing to, make broad draw broad conclusions about entire regions of the country based on that one story. But and it's not entirely true because, as I told Bill on that story, we did see one plate that summer at a yard sale. It only cost a quarter, so I just bought it.
You just bought it back. Nice.
Quiet about. But it turns out, these folks are all great neighbors. It's just, it was a different taste, a different cultural expectation. And once we started Front Porch Forum, what we discovered was that folks around Vermont were eminently practical. Mm-hmm. And if you gave them a tool that helped them solve daily problems, they would use it.
Right.
And if by chance, or by design, that tool also engendered more conversation among neighbors, got people talking to each other more, and a byproduct was people had a stronger sense of community, then all the better. And so that's really how we designed Front Porch Forum, was to solve everyday problems like borrowing a ladder and getting a plumber recommendation and finding the lost cat or the cow that got out of the pasture or whatever. And Front Porch Forum does that super effectively day after day, hundreds of Vermont communities, and has for years. And along the way, what we hear from people again and again is 6 months after starting to use it, a year, they say, gee, I've lived here a long time, but I find that in the past few months, I know a lot more people, and I've reconnected with people I hadn't spoken to in years, hadn't come across in years. And I've joined a club, and I started participating in the Wednesday morning coffee, group that meets down at the diner or whatever. And that's super rewarding for us. We love to see that growing sense of community when people put their local Front Porch Forums to use.
Yeah, well, I think that's exemplifies Vermont and maybe New England to a T in terms of once you do establish a relationship, there's a deep sense of loyalty there. Bill McKibben's article begins with that cookie story, and it's a very amusing story. I will agree that most places you'll get your china plates back, and I'm sorry that didn't happen in this instance. But once you make that connection with folks in your neighborhood here in New England, you do have that abiding sense of connection that doesn't even require conversations from time to time. You mentioned like helping shovel somebody's walkout. That would be a situation where next time a snowstorm comes around, it's just done. Maybe you're away on vacation and you don't even have to call anybody, and you come home and your driveway is plowed. I've had that experience, and I've done that for people. And I think that is where something like Front Porch Forum engages New Englanders and Vermonters in particular.
Yeah, it's really powerful to see. And I should share a story out of Moortown around Irene. I mean, I know it's a challenging subject because so many people were harmed, in pretty extreme ways by Irene, and our small staff here, scattered around Chittenden County, we all wanted to pitch in like so many other Vermonters when Irene started to unravel, hurricane to tropical storm. And about the time we're getting ready to close up shop and all head out, put our boots on and grab a shovel and head out to the worst hit communities as volunteers, we kept getting called back to our computers because they were just lighting up. And we saw surges that we hadn't ever experienced before of people asking for and offering assistance through Front Porch Forum. And we realized pretty quickly we had to hang up our shovels and our boots and stick to our computers. Like that was the one role that could offer the most benefit,
right,
to our Vermont broad community. But what we found was in places like Moortown, which were especially hard hit and had a pre-existing Front Porch Forum, people put it to use right away. Right up from the day it hit, right on through to, weeks and months after. And in all the ways you might expect, seeking and offering assistance and information, and really powerful ways and huge volumes of information. It was so valuable, people were printing it out and sticking it to the door of the town hall and other places around the community just to make sure everyone could see it if they didn't have internet access or electricity at that moment.
Yeah,
wow. We heard a story a year later at a conference that a group was holding about Irene, trying to know what lessons were learned. And the librarian from the elementary school there stood up and gave a little talk, and she said, look, I'm a social media maven, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. She said, but Front Porch Forum, hands down, was the most powerful tool for Moortown in the moment. But she said, more importantly than that, and this is something I hadn't really understood until she shared it, she said, Front Porch Forum had been a fertilizer for local networks in the year leading up to Irene. And she rattled off a list of clubs and groups, and whether they're informal or formal, the PTO, et cetera, that had either gotten reinvigorated or formed from scratch in the year since Front Porch Forum had started in that community. Just the fact that people had this easy way to communicate, and there's pent-up issues that, someone wanted to start this and someone else wanted to fix that, and, they start reaching out, and before you know, you've got a group of people together. And so when trouble hit, and boy, it was Irene trouble, especially for Moortown, people were tied in. They were dialed in to 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 different little local networks. And so it wasn't, I live here, but my kid goes to school 3 towns over, and I work 4 towns over, and my other family lives the other side of the state. That all may still be true, but now they also had 3, 4, 5 little local groups they were tied into, and that made their ability to respond much stronger.
Nice.
And resiliency was the word that kept coming up. And so we felt, we were really impressed with the people in Moortown and how they responded, and we're so honored that Front Porch Forum was able to play that role.
Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, obviously, Tropical Storm Irene, a very extreme example, but right now we're facing some weather where having that resiliency and having those bonds forged on Front Porch Forum can help a community come together in need. Michael Wood Lewis is my guest here on the Live and Local program. We're going to take one more break and then wrap up our conversation about frontporchforum.com.
Peaches, don't you shake my tree. Get out of my orchard, let my peaches be. And now she's gone, and I don't worry. Lord, I'm sitting on top of grove, my little love, I'm bound to go away. Cheeks as red as a blooming rose, and eyes are the prettiest brown. She's the darling of my heart.
We've been spending the hour with Michael Wood Lewis talking about frontporchforum.com, a website he founded close to 15 years ago now, right, Michael?
Well, in 2006 officially.
2006?
We did a precursor starting in 2000.
Okay. But really became as what it looks like now, and your attempts to kind of reach out to communities across the state is more down to 2006 than 2000.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty impressive time frame to reach out across all these communities in a state like Vermont, which doesn't have a lot of metropolitan areas where you can build up usership over a period of time. I imagine it has been a lot like that beginning when you're trying to get people to sign up for this, the story in Bill McKibben's article about just printing up flyers and trying to get people to sign on. You've had to be very grassroots in terms of how you build up a membership here on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah, we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but people generally, have busy lives, and they don't want one more thing that might feel like a waste of time. And so we work very hard to make Front Porch Forum valuable for folks. And what we find is that people are slow to sign up, They really need to be convinced.
Mm-hmm.
But once they do sign up, almost nobody quits.
Mm-hmm.
And we have about 70,000 members in Vermont so far.
Nice.
And, why would you quit? It's the place where you find out about the break-in 3 doors away. It's the place where, the neighbor's lost dog is located, where the neighbors rally to help the family whose house burned over the holidays. It's just useful.
Yeah, it's certainly better than getting notices about how one of your friends likes McDonald's or something like that, to contrast it with Facebook and the way their algorithms is pushing more and more needless information across our screens rather than needful information. And that really seems to be what you've done successfully with Front Porch Forum, is give people information that they need.
I don't know how popular we might be in Silicon Valley because, our approach is we don't, Facebook, they want you 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to perpetually be using their site, which, I understand. But with Front Porch Forum, we really want you for 5 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little dose of local information from your neighbors. You can ignore it. You can share it with somebody. You can act on it, whatever. But just come back tomorrow.
Yeah,
once in a while, speak up and join the conversation.
Yeah, you'll never make it in Silicon Valley with that kind of attitude. You're not focusing enough on CPMs, Michael. You're not focusing enough on screen time and things like that, and more to the good for it. I think that's certainly something that a lot of people in Vermont embrace, is the short aspect of things. But that said, now that you are statewide, now that you are in every community, I imagine you are working on some different things to make Front Porch Forum more robust.
Yeah, we've kept Front Porch Forum very simple over time because we find that that's our core offering, is this ability to easily connect with lots of neighbors. And so we've wanted to not cloud that up or bury that under bells and whistles. That said, there are a few key new features we've recently brought online. One of them is the ability to read postings from neighboring communities. So that's a recent addition, and that continues to evolve. And then another one that we developed in cooperation with Vermont Council on Rural Development is a community calendar. So each of the individual Front Porch Forums, each local version has its own community calendar, and all the events listed therein come from the neighbors and the local public officials, librarians, et cetera. And so since we have so much, in our developed areas, we have huge crowds of people locally, relatively huge, who are paying attention. And so it turns out to be a great place to host a community calendar. And whether it's at the yard sale, block party level, or whether it's select board meetings, school board meetings, or whether it's more of a regional level, all those kind of event listings are welcome.
Yeah. And just like anything else, you got to show up, you got to participate in order to make something work. It sounds like frontporchforum.com has been worthwhile for a lot of communities across Vermont already since it's been launched. And now that it's here in Brattleboro in September, hopefully we'll carry on the tradition. Michael Wood-Lewis, thanks so much for your time today. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Once again, that was Michael Wood-Lewis, founder of Front Porch Forum. And you can sign up for it now at frontporchforum.com. It's time for CBS News, and then we'll be back with Jerry Carboni from Brooks Memorial Library here on WKVT AM 1490. The preceding content originally aired on the Live and Local program, which airs every weekday morning from 9 a.m. to noon on WKVT AM 1490. You can get more podcasts by going to www.1490